Hail, hail. Good evening, folks, and welcome along to the latest episode of the Endless Celts Podcast. My name is Anthony, and the host chair for tonight. Delighted to be joined by two of the show regulars. First of all,
semi-regular.
Mr. Francis Carty, how are you doing, my man?
Aye, no bad. Wee bit of disaster at work the day, working in Carstairs, and before everybody asked, they did let me out. Didn't keep me.
There you go. It's always good to have you on, my friend. And of course, making his return fresh from his stint as the resident Chris Tarrant on the New Year's quiz show. A very tremendous episode, may I add. If you haven't seen it, check it back out. I've just a bit sobered up from it. John Tomlinson's back, going to give us some of those views that he's been penting up over the last few months. How are you, mate?
I'm good, man. It's good to be back. I've missed this. Just talking about Celtic, like quizzing that was cool, coming back and doing that, but it's good to just get back to regular business, so to speak.
You still can't afford the light bulb, sir.
What do you think this is all? This illumination is coming to?
It adds to his dark and mysterious persona.
See the light at the back.
Listen, that jumper's lighting up the whole room for the whole studio for the lot of man. So we've got the light versus the dark here. And welcome along, everybody in the show. We've already seen our good pals over at the bus have give us a shout out, plus all the other regulars. So welcome along, folks. Plenty to get through tonight. Cheers, guys. And of course, John's he's the man with the buttons tonight. He'll be bringing up all the comments. So by all means, get involved in the chat. As I say, plenty to get through tonight. Franny, we're just going to get straight into it. Saturday was our first home league game in 2023 back at Celtic Park with our visitors from Ayrshire. Kilmarnock were in town. But it was a bit of a stodgy start. First half was a bit flat, nothing much happening, but we got a goal just at the right time. And second half was more of a normal service, was pretty much resumed. But what was your own thoughts on the match?
Before we talk about that, Anthony, in case anybody's worried, I'm still top of Super 6, right? I actually extended
we just take that for granted
now. The game, it was that old cliche when it was certainly a game of two halves anyway. I mean, I think they said it was, the stat came up, it was about 70% possession, but I think it was Willie put in the group chat, nailed it, like we weren't really doing much in the final third, but the passing wasn't great, I didn't think, in the final third. They've got to kind of credit Kilmarnock, but they were structured, they stuck to the game plan. You could see it was obviously, like many teams are doing now, it's coming in and they've got a game plan. It's to stay in the game as long as they can, try and play in the counter-attack and things like maybe play for set pieces. And I just think sometimes we do it, like the passing was a wee bit laboured. There was nobody really, apart from Hatate was trying the difficult pass, but he was having one of the games up until the second half anyway, won't go on it, but the first half he was certainly nothing really seemed to be coming off. He has the games where he'll try the difficult pass and he looks, when they say a terrible football player, but it doesn't look a good football player because nothing comes off for him. And I don't think Kyogo's movement was great for people in Maeda. I thought was having another good game, but his final ball something has a wee bit to be desired, although he puts a great one in for the goal and stuff. Bernaby's passes, who 1 minute, a bit like Maeda, 1 minute looks a world beater, the next minute looks a really bad footballer. His passing sometimes is terrible, I think. Like he can play a wee 5-yard pass, but then he plays that defence button pass into Maeda, and then Maeda gets a great crosser in, and then Jota kind of just doing his inner Abada and creeping in. I know he was at the middle of the goal, but creeping in off the wing and just getting there in front. I don't know how he gets there in front of Kyogo because he's behind Kyle, unless Kyle's just missed it, but it's that one as well. You just score at the perfect time just before half time, then we come out second half and we're Ange must have gave them an absolute rollicking because we were an absolute different team. Hatate, just everything was coming off for him then, and he's an absolute, the team I think is a lot different when he's on it, when he's managed to do that, we drop the shoulder and get away from Bhoys. He's playing it through the lines, that frees up a lot of space for your guys like Moy and McGregor and stuff, and it brings everybody else into the game. It creates more space when our midfield's moving the ball a bit quicker and things are coming off. It creates that space and stuff, and Yeah, the second goal was a wee bit of carbon copy. A bit of the first goal just crossed into the box, and I don't know if Kyle was still getting credited, but I don't even know if he got a touch on it. But he's in there. The defender has to slide in to try and stop it, and it goes in. It was cruise control the second half, like absolute cruise control.
That's it, John. I think Franny kind of hit the nail on the head there, as have many in the chat that you've already brought up as well. It was the proverbial game of two halves, and just there was a lot more space. Everyone just seemed that little bit quicker in the second half. But again, it's just another, you would want to say, routine one now under Ange, and another 3 points on the board.
Definitely. Like you said, a bit of a lacklustre first half, getting the goal at the right time, though. I think that kind of settled some nerves getting into the second. And like you said, I think Ange has obviously had a word with them because they've came out and up to another couple of gears the second half. But it's the same old story. Like Francis alluded to, you go to these places and you're playing against these teams, and these guys, these teams are just, they're almost playing for a draw. That's the sort of the best outcome, I guess, that they're looking for. They will try and hit us on the counter attack and create chances where possible. But we play a brand of football at the minute where we limit the amount of times that we're able to, or the chances that they can create. Very, very few times I've seen this season where teams are actually coming at us and creating chances themselves. It always seems to be through a misplaced pass or just getting hit in the counter and things like that. So we creating. What frustrates me at the minute is the amount of chances we're creating. You see, how many times did we see in that Kilmarnock game that ball fizzing across the box and there was just nobody there? And then at times you're maybe screaming, well, Kyogo's not getting on the end of these balls, or Maida's not getting on the end of these balls. Maybe we should switch things up, and then these guys end up potting up and scoring the goals that you need anyway. But listen, we create that many chances that you expect that we're going to score goals. That's almost seems like a given at the minute. It's just a matter of when. But I think the longer matches go on where you don't score, it becomes a wee bit more frustrating. Certainly for me, anyway, watching it, you're like, just what is it we're missing up front? Where, like you said, because you're dominating possession, you're creating multitude of chances, and there never seems to be somebody at the right place at the right time, which can be a wee bit annoying sometimes. But I mean, it's you're sort of clutching at straws as well with that statement, because you're dominating games and you're creating these chances, and there's not much to complain about because the football we're playing is excellent at times. It's just a case of getting on the end of these balls, and teams are lucky. The teams that we're facing are lucky that there isn't people there, because some of the scorelines would be absolutely ridiculous, and it looks more favourable on name that they managed to limit or that the scoring is limited. And I think Kilmarnock were sort of victim of that. And McInnes has just came out and said the same thing. Like, he's echoing other managers' sentiments where they're saying this might be the best Celtic team I've came up against. And that says a lot about the brand of football we're playing, because although it was only the 2 goals, he's seen a team playing in such a dominant fashion and controlling the ball, controlling the game for such long periods of time, and constant attack after wavy attack after attack. It's great to see, and like you said, it's sort of routine at the minute. But again, you sort of worry about complacency when you're going maybe 45 minutes without scoring, and you seem to be a wee bit off the pace for 45 minutes, because it's no what we'd expect for an Ange football team, I guess, so to speak, at this stage.
Well, that's I suppose that, it's something I've mentioned in the group chat as well. The frustration of not being able to convert the very many chances that we're creating. But again, I suppose as long as we're getting the results, and of course it would be even Phil, the biggest problem we would have is if we weren't creating chances. So it's the old saying goes, we're due someday a proper scudding, I think, and hopefully it's not too far away. But
just
yeah,
to touch on that
definitely.
frustration, obviously you'll be able to answer it better than us, Anthony. It doesn't feel like the fans at the game are getting frustrated with the team. Seems when as games drag on, like John was saying, sometimes we're not scoring too late on, the fans still seem to be behind, like feeling we will create that chance and take it.
Yeah, I would probably say games against the one against Dundee United recently, where they equalised very late on to go 2-2, and then we went up the park and scored. And then we'd probably even say the Ross County game, although I don't know if perhaps the frustration in the stands was more from the ridiculous penalty that was awarded or via VAR. But I would say there was a bit more frustration in the stands that day. It was a little bit more tetchy. Understandably so, we conceded, and we conceded in both those games. But yeah, I felt there was a bit of a sea of calm on Saturday. There was the usual moans and groans, but I think everyone was pretty convinced that we would eventually get there, and we duly did. And
can I just touch on this? Sorry, Anthony, this comment Patrick made as well. I think that's quite a valid point. With the style of football we're playing, we're moving the ball very, very quickly, and at times it does seem we're maybe we're getting the ball out wide, we're cutting in, and the balls are coming across the box, and there's nobody there because maybe we are moving a wee bit too quick, or maybe it's just people are sleeping. I don't know what the case is, but
I would say I don't think you could actually say you're moving the ball too quick. I would say it's maybe just people aren't where they should be, or not getting into the right position at the time. But I don't think you could say you're moving the ball too quick. I don't think Ange would say that anyway.
No, Ange certainly wouldn't.
I see your point, and Kaiser's definitely making, kind of emphasising, something similar as well. It's, it can be so frustrating sometimes when teams just do line up, like John says, they're playing for a draw or even just a damage limitation defeat. It can be hard for even some of the most skillful players in the world can struggle to break that down at times. But we got there in the end, as I say, a rather hassle-free 2-0, as we like to call it, Franny, one of our favourite scoreline predictions. But I just wanted to, you guys have already sort of touched on them already, but I thought a few of the players did deserve a bit of a mention. I felt Maeda was really good on Saturday. Like you say, the amount of times, a lot of tracking back as well, because Kilmarnock there was a few times where they were playing the long ball, and their striker's quite a physical guy. They were wanting to get involved in the challenge, and Maeda kept coming back and just making sure that he was, doing his bit for the team defensively as well as going forward as well. And Rio Hatate, who was eventually given the man of the match, like you say, Franny, I thought he was sort of ineffective, shall we say, in the first half. But then second half, he just, he did what he normally do. He just decided, right, I'm going to take the game by the scruff of the neck now, and he was absolutely sensational in that second half. And just a special mention as well to our new Canadian right back who made his home debut after his impressive debut at Mordor the week before, which also impressed Alistair Johnston. There was obviously much made, Franny, on the week leading up to this game. Now that sort of Juranovic was available again, would he start at right back or would Johnson settle in? That's 2 games in a row now for a new signing, and personally speaking, I think he's slotted right in.
I thought he had a really good game at Ibrox. He didn't really do the inverted fullback, which is maybe just not used to it. It's not a familiar position for them. I thought he'd done it well on Saturday enough, but I can understand him not being, I wouldn't call it being scared or not being brave to do it. Maybe just try and get through the game, be safe enough at Ibrox and just play your way through the game. And I thought he was impressive at Ibrox on Saturday. He was at the park, I think it was twice I noticed him up in the left wing as well. So he certainly was doing the inverted fullback and some at Saturday. But he looks really, really athletic and really comfy on the ball. I think he's, I rate Juranovic, but I mean, no denying the guy's been off it. Absolutely, he was horrible at Ibrox, absolutely horrible. That's not an argument. But I always thought really is on the ball. Juranovic, I think, is really comfortable. But Johnson, I wouldn't say he's equally as comfortable, but he's good on the ball. But I think he's got more athleticism. Like he's more powerful than Juranovic. He's kind of got a bit of Ralston in that sense in him, and does look a confident lad. And again, like many of the signings, he talks well as well. He's could listen to him all day. He just seems to know about it and stuff, and seems to be the type that not in always Celtic, but he's privileged to be here and stuff. The way he speaks, like I know obviously his interview said when Victor Wanyama said, "You've got to go to Celtic." He said, "I tell his agent, I'm not interested in anybody else. It has to be Celtic." Probably a wee bit of a white lie, but that's what you've got to say in it. There will be some truth to it, but I don't doubt he would have meant, by the way, what the other teams in for me is how much money's involved and stuff. But I don't, as Ange said, he's not got to go over the top to convince somebody. So I think there is obviously an element of truth that it probably was a wee bit. I'm desperate to come to to Celtic, and Hatate in the first half said, I think ineffective is the right word, because he was trying things, he was on the ball plenty of times, it just things weren't happening for him. And then the second half, it was a Hatate, we know, the one that's between him and Taylor, it's a toss of coin right now for player of the season, and I mean for the league, not the actual Celtic one. It's just, there was a couple of times I actually seen Hatate. It's not the first time he's done it, but he actually managed to take a guy out the game without moving the ball. He was just kind of stop the ball, and he just does a wee drop of the shoulder, goes one way, ball doesn't move, and he's away the other way, and the guy's out the game. And it's like, it looks simple and sounds simple, but to actually just beat a guy without moving the ball, it's not the easiest thing in the world. And like I said, it just opens up so much space for us. And Hatate, it was unlucky not to get a goal, wee deflection and stuff, but they two, Johnson looks a real coup, and I appreciate it's 2 games in, but we can only go on the body evidence we've got. He looks a solid enough player, and Hatate's just doing absolute bits, man. It's ridiculous how to think we got this guy for about $1.5 million or something.
That's although we're very lucky, of course, so Franco, with all the money that we've spent, big spending. Listen, if it's getting financial advice from our friends in Govan, John, it's
how you didn't bother.
It's ironic. Let's just be charitable at best. They're all experts on IFAB at the moment. Just a shame they weren't particularly clued up on what to do with HMRC. But your own thoughts on the 3 players mentioned, and just their overall performance and their contribution to the one on Saturday.
I think for the likes of Hatate and that, I mean, we've seen the minute he came in that there was a player in him, and I know he sort of burnt out towards the end of last season, but I think he'd played like a full season just prior to coming to us anyway. So I mean, like a lot of these Japanese guys that came in that year, you kind of seen that maybe they were getting tired in the legs, and that was understandable. But he's shown again this season what a player he is, and it wouldn't at all surprise me if he ends up with a player of the year towards the end of the season, especially if he keeps it up. As for Johnson, though, I mean, I've been very, very impressed. And Brown Warrior made a point about maybe at fault for the Kent goal, and he showed him inside. I've never been a fan of defenders showing any players inside, and I've been critical of that in the past, but it's never easy for a player to come in and their debut being away to the likes of Rangers, because Rangers are the only team that's really going to come at us, and they have to, because the fans will only settle for anything less than them actually trying to score goals. So it's a different sort of game playing them than it is anybody else in the league. And it's a hostile environment as well, and we've seen that the fans are animals, man. They'll get on the Celtic players' backs. They're prone to throwing things, as we've seen. Safety isn't a concern. But Johnson came in. I think overall we had a fantastic game. He showed that his pace is unreal as well. I didn't even realise. He came for? He was up at some point. I'm just going back to the Rangers game here, and he tracked back at a rate I've not seen since I got. Like, even Maeda would have struggled to keep up with.
I don't think he's rapid, John, but see, over long distances he's fast, if that makes sense. He keeps his pace.
No, I mean, see if he was positioned on the park, you might be right in that sense, but when he tracked back, he came to
the slow. I'm not saying he's slow, but I don't like, say you get some players that are rapid like 10, 15 yards. He's rapid for long distances.
But he looks like he's got an engine in him as well. Like he doesn't tire too easily. He can run with the ball. He can find a pass. He's good at stopping the ball, intercepting. He looks like the complete package at right back. And like you said, he started both games. And Juranovic is back. We've seen, obviously, he had a fantastic World Cup. So I'm not buying anything that he's no fit or he's tired or anything like that. I think his time's up at us. I mean, you've seen all the reports, which I'm sure we'll sort of touch on. But we saw when he came on against Rangers at left back that he didn't seem like his heart or his head was in it. And I don't know, we can't use him being out of position as an excuse, because he started his debut at that position as well. So I think that Johnson is being a perfect sort of replacement for Juranovic, because I think he's going to be the man going forward. And it wouldn't surprise me if we just see Johnson's one of the first names on the team sheet as well. And like he says, I like the guy, the way he speaks and that, and the sort of the way he respects the club. At least we don't know, obviously, the ins and outs of how much he knows about us, and we can talk about, like Francis says, about the white lies. About as soon as Wanyama said, I suspect Wanyama probably did have a word with him, but we don't know the extent of that conversation. But this talk about as soon as I found out Celtic were interested, that was the only place I wanted to go. Depending on who obviously was interested, because it might have been a whole host of other shite teams, but he talks the talk, and he's sort of buying into the ideals of the Celtic fans, sort of that we all sort of buy into, and the way we speak about the club, and that he seems to be sort of buying into all that, which I like. I just think that with these guys that we're bringing in as well, I mean, I know we've still to see a couple of other ones, Iwata, who I guess we'll touch on again in a bit. I'm hoping that these guys have got the same sort of impact, because we don't want to see another instance, say, like an Gucci, who we don't know the circumstances surrounding that. I've heard certain things, but I think the way that we were moving forward certainly is in the right direction, and I'm hoping that that's a trend that's maintained.
Well, absolutely. It seems to be this just seems to be the evolution of Angie's side. And that was a seamless transition, John. So I'm coming straight back to you with regards to some other new arrivals. Tomoki Iwata was unveiled at half-time on Saturday at Celtic Park, and we're talking about impressive individuals that communicate well, and Alistair Johnston and the like. This guy certainly held court as good as any of them on Saturday. Came on, sort of lifted his scarf up, waved to the crowd a little bit. We didn't expect anything more, but then he gave us a little address and ended up with a hail, hail. So certainly this guy looks confident for me. Former, I think he was a J-League Player of the Year. You might be able to confirm that for me. From what I hear, because as I say, I am not clued up on Japanese football at all, he seems to be quite a versatile midfielder who can also play sort of in a defensive role as well. Sounds sort of the Rio Hatate mould, but if you're winning J-League Player of the Year, it seems as if even a Rio, who at the moment looks very much a nail on for Player of the Year, he's going to have some serious competition.
Absolutely, and like you said, I think the reports are saying that he did come. I mean, I don't watch any J-League football, so I just need to take what I hear. Nah, it's funny that. But he's coming in as the reported J-League Player of the Year. And we talk about versatility. Ange seems to have that. That seems to be one of the key attributes for any signing Ange brings in, is their ability to play multiple roles and do multiple different things. You didn't want you're all right having certain guys come in who are maybe one-trick ponies, but Ange, that doesn't seem to be the thing for Ange. He always talks about his part of his signing policy, the mentality, and there being a bigger picture. And I mean, last year or whatever it was, when we spoke to, I forget his name now. No, what's his name?
Boy Webb.
David Webb, aye. And he talked about that, like when analysing players, like attitude was a key component, and versatility was a key component in that. And that was that sort of modern day sort of scouting techniques now, where you're not just looking at a player and going, oh, he's good at this, we're signing him for that particular purpose. And just seems to be, you need to have the right sort of mindset, you need to have the right attitude, but you also need to be able to play a multitude of different positions when asked or when needed to. And I think that this Iwata's another one of these guys that's come in who we can rely on to slot into a different position. And we've got somebody to cover every single, we're possibly even a point now where 2 or 3 guys can cover positions all over the park. And it's fantastic to see. And I'm like I said, I'm hoping to see some of this Iwata soon, because I imagine if you're coming in as J-League Player of the Year, you're not coming in to sit on the bench. Like I suspect he's probably going to play a pivotal role over the next few months. It wouldn't surprise me if we even see him on this Saturday, getting some time. But I am looking forward to it, and like it's exciting. Anytime we sign somebody's exciting. It's because you know the kind of player that Ange is bringing in, and you know he's not just going to be some, like I mentioned Gucci earlier, because he's the one guy I think Ange has brought in who's not really had a chance to sort of show what he's capable of. But I don't know what the issues. Like I say, I've heard some things about him no settling and no having the right sort of attitude and stuff like that. But again, that's all hearsay. It depends on what kind of shit you want to believe. But it's just one of these things. Like it seems everybody, 99% of the guys we're bringing in anyway, are coming in and they've got a role to play. And it seems like Ange has got them in some sort of rotation, and they're definitely going to be a mainstay going forward.
I think so, and that's the thing as well, Francis. John alludes to the fact we might see him sooner rather than later in the team. But do we think, just similar to Hatate last season, it might be the case that we maybe not see the best of him until next season, just with the fact that he's just came off the back of a long season in Japan. So it might well be the case that maybe we want to, I don't know if learn's the right word, but just with the fact that there was quite a, just with the closeness of the title race last year, Hatate kind of came in, burst onto the scene, to quote Mika Richards. And then, but as you said, from sort of March onwards, you could definitely tell that he tailed off a bit. But will we maybe try, do you think, to break him into the squad a little bit more slowly to get him up to speed? Or do you think it might be the case that he could come in straight away and then Hatate also, being there as the season goes on?
I actually don't know. I think he's making a good point there, because I never actually thought about that. In that sense, we could certainly not rush him in due to all the things you've just alluded to there about not burning him out and stuff. But equally, because we know how well Hatate and McGregor and that are doing in midfield, maybe more chance to rotate them, so he'll maybe not play the amount of games that Hatate played up to it. So there's two ways to look at it. I think, like, without sounding lazy, Ange will know best how to treat him and how to do it. It'll be one of them. He might not settle in as quick. I don't. The evidence we've got in front of us will not suggest it. It will suggest he'll just slot right in. I think there will, but as much. I mean, I'll touch on that now, but just before I finish on all that and stuff, I think Ideguchi aside, the Japanese players we've brought in have all hit the ground running. So the evidence would suggest that he won't need to bed in. Obviously, I'm not really putting Kobayashi in that now as well, because he's obviously just in the door as well. So right now you've got a 75% success rate with the Japanese guys. If you look at Kyogo Maeda, Hatate, and Ideguchi, the three at the four have been fantastic. So there's nothing to suggest Iwata and Kobayashi won't be the same. I mean, like we said, four of them will not. I'm not like to put Kobayashi, and I can't judge him yet. 4 of them never came as player of the year in the league. Iwata has, so you've got to, like John says, every signing is exciting, but you've got to be a wee bit of excitement in it. And yeah, I do think we do need to get rid of some fringe players, but folk need to buy them. Folk need to buy them. And folk will know you maybe want to trim the squad and maybe come in with small offers and stuff. So it's a balance. Do these players want to go? I think it would do Ideguchi a favour to go. And maybe just as one of these players that can settle. I know he had a time where he came over to Leeds, but I think he went to Germany due to work permit issues. If I've read it right, it was not that he couldn't come in at Leeds. It was just, I think it was work permit issues. So he had to go to Germany for a while, and it just never worked. It's a totally different. If it's sounding like a globetrotter, I've never been over to Asia, but it's a totally different culture. So some guys, I mean, I appreciate he's 26, 27, they might just no settle. It's no shame in the guy, just might no settle. So I think maybe just try and get him out in the nicest possible way and move him on. So we might touch on a couple of ones that seem to be going, but I think the midfield just needs a wee bit of trimming. I think there's talk of that Abelgard maybe going back. That might be a wee bit easier to move on because it's a loan deal.
Aye.
But
I think
strange one, that one.
You made a valid point though. Like, I mean, it's kind of unfair to be hard or critical of Ideguchi as well when you consider the amount of competition he's got in that position.
Aye. I mean, he was unlucky when he came in. He got wiped out and was injured.
Aye, and then you're competing with the likes of Amoy, who is by all accounts he's playing fantastic at the minute. Mm-hmm. You've still got Abelgard there, although it does look like he's going to be leaving. McCarthy, another guy whose time at the club probably is up. I think it's safe to say, but he's still got like 3 years, like you mentioned about players. These you have to buy them. Like he's still got 2 or 3 years left on his deal. And
two and a half now, yeah.
Who's looking at him? And you then say
a European team surely want to be looking at him because they want twice his career here and it's never worked for him.
And then you start going down the road. Well, maybe we just terminate contracts and let them go. It's like then they want compensation, and that's more money getting spent. So it's tough. But I like Iwata coming in it kind of doesn't look good for Eddie Gucci, given the fact he's had limited chances as it is. And then you've got Iwata coming in, you've got Hatate playing incredible. You've got the likes of O'Reilly, Kilmarnock, Moy. It's tough to break into them when everybody's playing the way they're playing. It's no easy, so it's hard to sort of say.
Well, that's it, and there's so many competition for places. It's a nice headache for the manager to have, I suppose. You know, it's rather that than having nobody.
Can't have too many good players.
Absolutely. And speaking of another seamless transition, Franco, when you're talking about transfer rumours, it's the next section we want to focus on, both in and out. We'll start with potential outgoings at the moment, and we'll start with addressing the two big elephants in the room. Was, of course, Georgios Yakimakis, our current striker, and obviously our World Cup hero, Josip Juranovic. Now, again, there's nothing confirmed. I don't think there's been any official bids in as yet, unless I've missed anything today. But some of the figures being bandied about certainly raise an eyebrow in terms of how low they are. Stephen sort of touched on this on Friday night, suggesting that it might be a clause in the contract from when Juranovic signed, which is why Celtic have been so eager to kind of get him on a new deal, to have this minimum, I think it's 7 million fee, like the minimum release clause, sort of scrapped almost, and then we can start to demand a far higher fee for him, because let's be frank, he's worth a lot more than 7 million. They would appear to be big outgoings at the moment. If they were to come off, they certainly seem to have the most traction in the media. Were they to, obviously we've got Alistair Johnston in already as a replacement for, you would imagine, a straight replacement for Juranovic. However, there's also Cho Gi-sung, the South Korean striker. Sky Sports confirmed last night that Celtic have tabled a bid in the region of £3 million. Would that be? Would you say that would be a straight swap for Yakimakis?
I mean, it's got to be like many other signs. We didn't know much about the boys. I've seen a wee bit of him in the World Cup. I'm desperate for us to sign this South Korean boy. I don't know why. Absolutely no logic to want to sign him. I mean, it must be all right if he's getting a game for South Korea. In that sense, I think he was a number one choice striker in the World Cup. Plays up there with Son. I think a wee bit of me is just expecting us to sign a Son, even though Spurs spent the best part of 20 odd million on him. But I'm more excited to be this guy. I mean, for sort of a marketing point of view, it's a no-brainer. The guy's got 3 million followers on Instagram. So from a marketing point of view, it makes total sense to try and do this deal. But saying that, I mean, the guy could be an absolute superstar. I just don't know. My only issue is it one of the ones, better the devil, you know? I mean, I think it was Ross asked the question on Friday, just a wee off-the-cuff question, Kyogo or Giakoumakis, who you having? It's got to be one. Him and Stephen went Kyogo. I understand where they're coming from. He fits everything about Angie's style. But it's Giakoumakis for me. There's something about the big man. I love him. Like, I do really rate him. He's, like John was saying earlier, and I agree, like, Ange signs utility players. Giakoumakis isn't a utility player. He's a number 9. So he is, but he's a really good, in my opinion, he's a really good number 9. I have said in the past that he's only really had 2 good seasons in his whole career, which is fair. But the guy, like, you seen him when he got in Saturday, he was, wouldn't quite go as far to say he was a man possessed, but he seemed bang up for it, and like that header on the shot, he done everything but score. He was even laying things on. He wasn't kind of being greedy where he's getting the 10, 15 minutes where he's snatching things and trying to get it. He was laying off. He was more a team player at the weekend because he knew he had time. I just think Giakoumakis gives something totally different. The boy Cho might be of a similar mould. I don't know. I would imagine it might be a bit like a bigger guy. He looks a bigger guy than obviously Kyogo's, but he might be sort of have the pace and the run about that Kyogo does. Not that Giakoumakis doesn't do that. He just doesn't do it the same as they boys. But I didn't want Giakoumakis to go. I'm not ready for him gone. I'll be honest. Like I can Ange says, didn't fall in love with players, but I'm sorry, Ange. Didn't bring in Giakoumakis. Didn't bring in guys like Giakoumakis, and I'll not fall in love with him. But the Juranovic one, That's the weirdest one ever, I think. 7, like, it seems weird that Celtic have buyout clauses. It's never something we seem to have done in the past, but 7 million seems to be alluding to something like that. It just seems such a low figure for what he's at. Like, the guy's no superstar like that. I mean, I said when on Friday we should be looking. I mean, wasn't necessarily a throwaway off the cuff statement, but I reckon we should have been starting Tierney money and above, considering the silly money that boys go for on the back of a decent World Cup.
True.
So that's what I was basing my figures on. I agreed with Ross. If we get 12 to 15, I think we're doing really good business, especially if you look at it. I mean, you could argue 7 million after 18 months and a guy that costs us 2.5 is good business in this. But when you see what he's done, had a good first season, hasn't been up to the standards this season, but then has a really good World Cup, arguably was in some of the Stato's team of the World Cup and stuff, which, I mean, Diego Laxalt got an £18 million move off the back of that, so there's precedent for being in the World Cup team of the year. So the 7 million figure, I think it was Stephen Hendry, who I believe is mate, if you read Twitter, he's pals with Peter Lowell, and usually on the ball with some Celtic transfers on Twitter. Mm-hmm. I think he initially reported, but he's also reporting that the deal's not as cut and dry as 7 million. So I don't know, as I say, the figure just seems mad, and it's what's even more mad is I'm going to Monza. If there's any element of truth in that is madness. To me, if he ends up at Monza for 7 million, there's a lot more than just him. There's something else happened for me, in my opinion. You didn't go for Celtic playing the Champions League, and he's still obviously got to be Croatia's right back, but you didn't go playing Champions League football to Monza. Yeah,
well, I think Franny's bang on the money there, John. I think there is, without question, there's more to this than meets the eye, because I'll be honest, I felt the boys, maybe not for, I was on your side on Friday night, Franco, with regards to the money we should be looking to expect for Juranovic, because, and I'm not just saying on the show, on our show itself, I think in the wider context, I'm not saying he's the best right back that we've ever had or anything like that, but I think
he's certainly the Efrain Juarez.
Exactly. I just think, considering, I thought he was very, very good in his first season. I thought he was very good and typified the kind of football and personality that Ange looks for when he's signing a player. And nobody can say that he's hit the ground running in the same manner this season. He hasn't. He's not been at those heights. But I think a lot of players, not just at Celtic, they always have a lot of credit in the bank from maybe a season before or whatever. I mean, God, Lee Griffiths, he was running off Ronnie Dyler's season still when Neil Lennon was in charge 4 years later. I just think a lot of the support have forgotten very quickly just how good a player we have on our hands. And if you are getting sold for, I think, me and Ross definitely do disagree on Calvin Bassey for a start. I'm not denying he's a good player, but 20 million was ridiculous, quite frankly, for what they paid for him. But Ross's argument always was he's done really well in the Europa League, and I agree. You can't disagree with that, John, because Bassey did. But it's certainly, Celtic had him on toast for at least two of those derbies after Christmas last year. So, whereas Juranovic looked fantastic domestically and was more consistent. So, if we're saying that you can have an elevated transfer fee on the back of a Europa League campaign, then surely to God, getting to the semi-final of the World Cup and being one of the players of the tournament is only going to, surely, without this clause, would be elevating your fee as well.
Definitely, and that's what kind of concerns me, because the 7 million touted is far, far too low, or what you would expect to get from him. Like, even if he's been, you can't see the club turning and accepting 7 million. It's just odd to me, because he's worth more than that, and absolutely. And to me, it's either one of two things. Like, first off, let me just is there any weight in these reports at the minute anyway? Because
It's all hearsay and conjecture, as Ross would say, isn't it?
Well, that's it. I mean, I've already started seeing stuff coming out saying that the 7 million touted figure is way off the mark. And who broke that story? Where did the figure come from? Who is it that's close to some fucking Monza who's leaking this information? Do you know what I mean? Like, where is it coming from? It has to come from somewhere. Somebody's either making it up or it's factual. Stephen touched on it and he says that it might be a release clause. Again, it doesn't sort of follow the mould that Celtic follow. It's not something we normally do, especially for such a low value. So it comes down to one of two things. Either is a release clause and 7 million is the figure that's been bandied, and that's accurate. In which case, Celtic are in a position now where they're saying, well, we're not going to... with Johnson coming in, Juranovic's time at Celtic's probably up. If his heat's been turned and everything else, maybe his attitude and everything else has changed, right? So has he turned around and he said, or I'm talking Celtic here, turned around and says, well, do you know what? If the longer we leave it, if he's not going to be playing anyway, and he's not going to be the first choice going forward, the longer we leave it, we're putting ourselves in a position where we could potentially lose even more value going forward. So maybe a year down the line, like if you maybe sell next summer, maybe that value is dropped, and maybe Celtic are just saying, look, just cut our losses, we'll just take 7. Because he's not going to feature in Ange's plans, and with his attitude and everything else might be different, or it's a lot of nonsense. Like I don't know. Again, where do the stories break for? Who is it that's breaking this, and who's it the person that's banding these figures about? Because as I say, we're already seeing stuff coming out now saying that figure's way off the mark. So it remains to be seen. I know one thing though, if he is pushing for a move to the likes of Monza, it's not a footballing decision. I mean, there's a significant difference in the terms of lifestyle that living in the sort of the Lombardy area, Italy, than Glasgow. Both in terms of like how it looks.
Just a bit.
Just a bit.
More vitamin C, John.
A wee bit. And again, the club they're toiling at the minute. They're fighting a relegation battle. They've just come up. They're no expected to be a sort of a heavyweight team in Italy. The signing of Juranovic isn't going to change that. And by all accounts, they could well be flirting with relegation coming into this season or even next season. And he's losing out the European football and stuff like that. So it money talks, as they say, and like some players just don't care for the football side of things. They want to play like in the sort of the lavish locations, and they'll have that sort of lifestyle in this day and age, and that could be the other thing that's kind of turning. I mean, and he's jumping at the chance at the first team that's come in for an exotic sort of location, and he's want to just take it. He's want to just bite the hand that feeds.
Much more money at Monza, though, John.
In terms of wages, probably because Monza. I think Monza are bank. Well, the Berlusconi's their owner.
Oh, is he?
That that in itself should be a red flag. But I think they're heavily bankrolled. They're no short of a few pound. And I mean, in terms of wages, he's probably going to be making the same, if no more. And but like I says, the location, the sort of lifestyle that he can lead, all these things are probably playing. I mean, that's the only logical thing I can see for anybody saying I'd take Monza or Celtic. It's not a footballing decision. As for what were you going to say?
I was going to say, when you said that, I can actually my wee apprentice actually told me the day that it makes sense with it being Berlusconi, that apparently but would have been Berlusconi offered Monza. I think they must have been playing Juve either in the Liga or in a cup. And they said if they beat them, he'll bring a bunch of hookers to the hotel. Just sounds like Berlusconi when you think about it. So I can't maybe understand them. Maybe why I go to Monza.
Zefran Juarez, the director of football. It's getting a lot of airtime tonight. Our favourite South American right back, centre half, whatever he was. So yeah, these are absolutely bang on, boys. I mean, there's going to be we're on January the 9th. We've still got another 2.5 weeks of this, and it's going to be rumour after rumour, gossip after gossip, and in the end, I'm sure, regardless of what happens, I'm sure Celtic, the way we're moving at the minute and the way that we seem to be planning ahead, that will still come out.
The one thing I want, and this, I'm trying. I'll not try and go into a rant here because it's been boiling my.
Like a kettle on, Franco.
But see, and I've noticed an awful lot of Celtic fan media websites and stuff like that, news, whatever you want to call it, are all using like articles being broken by the likes of the fucking Daily Record and the Sun as gospel. like they must zip, some of these guys must zip up the back, because how many these papers and these sort of these reporters have never ever written anything sort of favourable about us, and we've seen time and time again they're constantly unsettling players, and there's constant lies in the media and everything else about teams being linked with so and so. Juranovic was being linked with Chelsea and Barcelona, but now he's got to Monza. It's like, I wish people. I think that Celtic fan media, by sort of giving weight to it and sort of reporting on it, and then not even like you're not even quoting a source with any credibility. You're actually in your article, you're saying the Daily Record is reported. Like, why even bother? Just didn't get any weight, didn't get any credence, and just fucking.
To be fair to them, probably a lot. It's the World Cup. There was not a lot to talk about.
But even if that's the case, mate, like, don't give them any weight. Like,
it's hard to put content in if you've not got anything to talk about. But
there's still stuff to talk about. Just don't be reporting a lot of shite for shit rags. That's I just don't get it.
What would you boys on Friday night, that when before the show started, Ross was worried that there wasn't going to be much to talk about. 2 hours later, these are still going strong.
It just annoys me, man, because every time I open up my internet browser or my phone, whatever the case is, I'll check various Celtic websites, and I'll check Twitter and everything else, and I'll just kind of get an idea or a feel for what's being said. And so many people now are taking, like, they're actually giving weight and credence to these reporters, and I think they've got a short memory, because not a single fucking one of them have ever gave us any credit in the past. None of them ever say a favourable word. They never back anything we do up. It's negativity after negativity after negativity. And then when they start reporting on players like, oh, Juranovic, he's had a great World Cup, he's gone to Barcelona, he's gone to Chelsea, it's going to be 25, 30 fucking million. And then you've got, oh, no, he's going to Monza for 7. And then Celtic websites are going, oh, breaking news, Daily Record has said this. He's peace, man.
Aye. I mean, if the Daily Record told me it was Monday, I would check my calendar, as they say.
No, or you could just tweet it and say, by the way, Daily Record said it's Monday. It must be true.
And following on, this is just it's going to be another good one here, Franco. From transfer rumours to John's favourite subject, VAR. Thankfully, to be fair,
I don't buy any of the papers, mate. Trust me. I wouldn't even wipe my ass with them. Sorry,
that is okay. Apart from, thankfully, on Saturday, in terms of Celtic anyway, there wasn't much in terms of, after Angie's fantastic press conference, I have to say, on Friday, Franny, I'd said in the group chat, we're guaranteed we'll get a penalty today. Absolutely guarantee it. And then they'll be able to go, see, there's no conspiracy, this, that, and the other. I thought I could write the script. Now, as it happens, we didn't get the penalty that I'd put a wee fiver on us getting. But what we did get is a stress-free afternoon. I know there's been a couple of lone balls flowing into Clyde once, saying Kilmarnock should have had a penalty for a handball, which is, you believe that, you believe anything. But it is the fact that Angie's saying, we're not, but he very diplomatically stated that, our case, shall we say, and the following day we have a relatively stress-free afternoon. Is the message starting to get through that Celtic aren't going to stand for this inconsistency any longer?
I think as a message, I don't know, but I think what's clever for Celtic is they're speaking up on the back of. I know we drew against Rangers, but it's in the main, certainly the fans anyway, we are bringing up issues with VAR on the back of wins, which I think is key. You're not, because even if say you get beat and then you're going, I'm not using this as an excuse, but you're using an excuse. So
it's like the Livingston plastic pitch scenario, isn't it?
Aye,
it's exercise that ghost.
Speaking off the back of wins, it's giving you a bit of sort of I know you're speaking for a better position, so to speak. It's not sour grapes, or anything like that. So I think I said it Friday. It surprised me, Angie's comments. He's not, like I said, I'm not saying he used it as an excuse, but he's been open about VAR, saying he hopes he never needs to talk about it. He's never really used any as an excuse. He's never brought up. He never used the plastic pitch as an excuse like at Livingston. He never used like things like, obviously even going way back to when he came in. Like, this is the first time he's seen these teams, and when he was going through his difficult period at the start of it and things like that, there was perfect times. There's been a few times where Ange probably could have used plenty of excuses in the managerial sort of notebook or handbook to say, right, this is what you say here when you get beaten, things like that. But it did surprise me, and then obviously it's kind of on the back of Celtic saying, like, Celtic as a club questioning the decisions and things, and just wanting clarity, because it's if people aren't, like, I'm not want to go down the paranoia, but if nothing's transparent, it kind of feeds into paranoia. If you don't know what's happening, it feeds into the paranoia and stuff. And like the Goldson handball, like you said, Anthony, like every turned into IFAB specialists. It was a weird one. Then apparently they changed the handball rule after the World Cup. Why not tell us that? That's, I mean, Ross mentioned it on Friday. It's bad enough that it's bad enough that you bring in VAR halfway through a campaign, so you're already changing the sort of dynamics of a league campaign. Then you actually you say the system's not really ready, but bring it in earlier. So it's already, and then you're changing how you're interpreting rules midway through a season. Because as much as it was, I think that we understand, like, we all consider ourselves fairly clued up about football, but I think if anybody could tell me the handball rule right now, I would probably give them £1 million, because I fought on it, and I think what they were doing beforehand was, depending on which shirt you were in, and if your name was Connor Goldson, I think before the World Cup, whatever hurt your hand was handball. Now, I think England started with that when they brought VAR in, which is, it would be annoying because you get the instances like O'Reilly, Bernabeu, where they're either flicks on, but there's still much they can do about them. But see if you go down that and go, right, everything that hits a hand's handball, then everybody's playing on the same rules as shite as it is. Everybody's playing, but it seems to be after the World Cup, it's, oh, well, IFAB says this, IFAB says that. Because also, I don't think you need to stick to it. You can interpret the rules how you want to an extent. I don't think you need to stick to IFAB, but it's just VAR it's interesting, so to speak. Me and John have had debates in the past. And VAR has not really helped my argument against John, because I've said that I don't think refs are subconsciously going in and being biased. And I've also said that I'm not really, like John said, refs should be disclosing.
He's getting ready. He's getting ready.
And I've said I don't see the point, because I've went back to say I don't think people are going in to be biased. But I mean, I agree a wee bit. You as a human being will subconsciously be biased in any walk of life. You will be subconsciously biased, and unfortunately, I mean, I'm not total going the opposite way. I think maybe referees should maybe disclose what team they support. The problem we've got then is we've really got enough referees. Our referees are bad now without having to scrape the barrel for more. So that would probably pose its own issues. But the way VAR has been implemented now is not really helping my argument when it comes to what me and John have debated about.
Well, I'm glad you brought one of those points up, Franco, because I'm going to come straight to John about it. And John, if you haven't heard the audio clip, I've got like a few sort of moments from it. Michael Stewart and Kenny Clark were having a bit of a debate, shall we say, about this on Sports Sound on Saturday. And Kenny Clark basically I think he was sent in there, and he clearly was told beforehand that he would not be discussing individual matters. So the BBC, in their typical white ball way, they strayed away from the Connor Goldson incident and other exactly. But Kenny Clark was there to essentially, I think, clear up the debate, and he ended up making a complete and utter mess of it. And, well, needless to say, it only seems to have been Michael Stewart that's really picked up on it so far. Kenny Clark basically admitted that all referees rule, in not so many words, everything is subjective, and basically it is, they are not there to implement the laws of the game. They implement them in the way that they see them, and in terms, which literally means every referee will interpret a rule the different way. Like, can you imagine if you had, in a wider sense, police officers that did that, or anything else? I'm going way off tangent there, but Michael Stewart called him out on it. He says that is a lazy excuse. That is, it was absolute nonsense. And then Kenny Clark then tried to defend it by saying, "Oh well, you're always going to have fans. Fans are going to disagree with every decision that goes against them," sort of thing. A very pathetic response. And again, Michael Stewart called him up on it and says, "Well, that just shows you that even pre-VAR and post-VAR and everything that's happened in between, you have learned absolutely nothing on how to officiate a game of football properly." Just before you come in, what I think about it as well with regards to handball, I'm quite, and especially with, you'll know the way I would comment on all the handball penalties in the World Cup, especially. I think there are very few incidents where handball should be given. Now, of course, you've got the deliberate ones, like we've seen in the FA Cup at the weekend. They're the ones that deliberately stop the ball going in the net or whatever. That's a straight red and a penalty. No questions asked there. But for me, the only other time a handball should really be given, for me, is if it, in a very severe way, affects the trajectory of the ball going forward. For example, James Forrest, Michael Smith, Tynecastle, handball all day long. I don't necessarily think, maybe one or two of all of these handball incidents that have been given across the board, whether it be Celtic or Rangers or anything, I think very few of them are actual handballs. But I'm just saying, well, if you're going to give handball for some of the ridiculous ones that have been given, how can you then not give them? And you can hide behind IFAB all you want. Their penalty kicks, especially the one at Ibrox last week, that's a penalty even before VAR, because they say, "Oh, what's the latest defence?" that he was blocking his face. His hands are nowhere near his face. The ball's nowhere near his face. And even if you want to bring it in that it's a natural reflex, well, that in itself, it was affecting the trajectory of the ball towards the goal, and he clearly handles it.
So,
see, before you start, I think they've tried to be clever with using the term subject. That's been getting peddled for the start, which to an extent every decision is subjective, because you can be deemed subjective because it's your interpretation of the law. The only
That's why we've got rules.
The only thing that shouldn't be is it over the line? Is it not? Is it offside? Is it not? But even we're getting subjective offsides, because I must be the amount of Champions League I've watched, English Premier League watched, we must be the only team that referees went to the monitor to check an offside.
Check an offside, exactly.
What happened to
More
the
than
lines?
once.
I thought it only happened once, John. But I mean, how many times? I thought, what's the point in the lines if we need a referee to tell if it's offside?
Very
right, John,
true.
the floor is yours, kid.
Take it away.
I'll keep it short. Nah, but seriously though, I mean, you touched on some valid points, Anthony. And it's like, when you've got the likes of Kenny Clark coming in and his role there is to try and sort of put weight behind the decisions and then try and say, or give an explanation as to why, but like you say, it's purposefully no touching on certain incidents and just try to give there has to be consistency then. If you're going to use that as an argument, then it has to be consistent, and you have to be able to use previous incidents as a source of reason. You can't just turn around and say, this is a handball, this is a handball, this is a handball. And then when somebody says, well, what about this incident? I'm not here to talk about this. I'm not here to talk about specific incidents. It's like, because you're not taking account of what the actual issue is. And I think for Mace fans, the issue is, take aside what Francis says there about subjective and the sort of the grey area and interpretation of rules, that it should be simple, black and fucking white. A handball is a handball, and there should be clear and identifiable rules as to what constitutes as a handball, plain and simple. And anybody who's refereeing a game at that level, I know that they're no, and I mean, it's evident they're no professionals, that you should still have a sort of base understanding of the rules of the game. And when you've got a set of referees who are coming in and they don't understand the rules, then that in itself is an issue. Because if you're giving weight to a referee's decision to make a call and then using its interpretation of the rules as an excuse, is fucking ridiculous. Like it's beyond a joke that in Premier League football in Scotland that you're actually basing an argument on whether it's subjective or it's comes down to an individual's interpretation of the rules. It's like, no, that's not the case. You can clearly say, and Anthony, you made a valid point where you turned around and said, if somebody directly changes the trajectory of a ball, it's handball. We used the sort of the Burnaby incident where he jumped up, his back was to the ball, he had no idea where the ball was, his arm was up because he was giving himself leverage to get up into the air, it hit off his arm. There has to be a clear understanding as to whether or not that is deemed as deliberate, which we all know it wasn't. And did it change the direction of the ball? Yes. And it's like, you can sit and say, there has to be a clear understanding then as well. If it's not deliberate and he's got his back to the ball, is it still considered handball if it's no deliberate? Because he still changed the trajectory. Because that ball could have came across the box and then met another player who could have potentially scored, right? So it's like that in itself creates a discussion, and that's something that should be addressed. But when you've got other instances like us against Hearts, changed the trajectory of the ball in the box when the ball was coming across, not given. And then you've got Goldson, who, like you say, putting your hands up towards your face is a natural reaction, but that doesn't change the fact that he changed the trajectory of the ball and it interfered with sort of the state of play. A natural reaction to a movement and flinching, so to speak, doesn't give you the sort of weight to say or reason to say that it wasn't intentional. And this is what I'm talking about when it comes down to lack of clarity, and it has to be black and white. So there has to be a sit down somewhere where they sit down and they come out and say, look, this is handball, this isn't, and then stick to it. But the fact that they can't, and even referees in this country and across the UK are arguing whether it is and isn't, shows that there's no clarity, there's no sort of it all comes down to interpretation. And as a rule, especially one that can sort of determine the outcome of a game, as a rule, that is absolutely ridiculous. And it shows complete and utter incompetence, because you then, like, you've got a rule set in place that you can't sort of objectively manage, so to speak. If you're saying, well, I don't know, and how many times is it where we've had a decision and it's went to VAR and VAR says, we're not sure, go and take a look at the monitor or whatever it is. We don't even get that.
You're right.
And
the only one I can think of that he went to the monitor was Livingston. The one Yakimakis missed. Second week implement. He didn't go to the monitor at Tynecastle. Didn't go to the monitor at Ibrox. He's went to the monitor for decisions awarded to us, like Dundee United and the O'Reilly one was Ross County, if I remember correctly. But we have not had referees go to the monitor very often. And one other thing, John, and I agree with practically everything you said there. In fact, I agree with everything you've said there, because it's a lot of the issues that frustrate me as well. Franco, you made the point that there's not been or I don't think we've seen an incident yet where a mistake's been made or a decision's been made and the referee, the VAR, has said to the ref, go and have a look at that. And the minute he goes to, it's now became like almost like part of the culture. The minute he goes to the monitor, the decision's going to be changed. Yeah, I would be willing to bet my mortgage on the first team that will happen to, where he'll maybe award a penalty or he won't award a penalty. That the VAR will say, "No, go and look at it. You might have made an error," and he'll stick with a decision that negates or is negatively affects Celtic. We will absolutely be the first team that it happens to. I've got absolutely no question about it. Or it will be something in favour of Rangers. One of the two. I'd like to say
a majority, I would say, think like that. I'd like to class that as tinfoil stuff, but the body evidences I've got in front of me, well, I say in front of me, that we've seen, it's hard to argue against that.
So I hope it doesn't.
So this is the thing. I mean, there was an interview. Sorry, I don't know if you've seen the clip of McCoy's talking about the sort of tinfoil hat stuff with Celtic fans.
Nah, I've not. I've seen
everything's
of it. So
I think everything's against us, so to speak. It's like we're not just thinking it; it's fucking evident. Like you're seeing it.
I think Ange was clever in how he done it, and he brung other teams into the argument.
Well, let's look at Dundee United at the weekend there. Goldson again made another fantastic save. Nothing, not a peep. And then you get these clubs. Oh, it's like you mentioned earlier, Francis. It's sour grapes. It's like, well, it's no, because we're still raising the question when we're winning, and we're no losing games. So it's like this whole mantra: always cheated, never defeated. Pish, you can put that to bed because we're no losing games. We're still winning. But when you've got other teams in the leagues turning around and going, come on, like that should have, like it's not just Celtic that are subject to it against them. Other teams are suffering as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you mentioned earlier about these arguments that we've had in the past about when it comes to bias and you know my feelings on this. I'm not into all that, but it's clear as fucking day.
Am I right in saying like just that the handball rule, we interpreted it different to England? Like for some reason, it's either a handball rule or offside rule. You can interpret it different depending on your league, which is mental as well.
I've no idea.
I'm sure the handball rule something you can interpret it differently to other leagues. Obviously, offside you kind of.
This is the thing though. In England, it's probably more aligned to the actual rules. In Scotland, it's more aligned to whatever referee's deciding at that particular moment in time.
I don't know if you've seen Salah's goal at the weekend against Wolves. It was a lot like Abada's against Livingston, but Salah's goal gave.
Abada's goal should have stood.
Oh, 100%.
It's another one. The centre half didn't deliberately go for a ball. What's he doing on the park then? Is that no? To quote my other Sky Sports hero, Roy Keane, that's his job. Well, listen, boys, we could debate this. I'm sure we will, pretty much on a weekly basis. But yeah, I think we'll call it.
That's another thing that needs to stop. But I agree, mate. See, this taking 5, 6, 7 minutes to make a decision.
The attack one, I think it was against Hibs, that offside where the ref had to go to the monitor. It was about 3 yards on side, and you're like, how are you taking this long? It's bad enough that you're having to go to the monitor. It's bad enough you're being asked to go to the monitor to check an offside. But what are you looking at for 3 minutes?
In any case, I'm sure, but I didn't realise as well, we've got no game to look forward to midweek. I think there's a few midweek games coming up, but not this week, so no lineup predictions or that for this one, boys, but I'm sure the boys will be back with that on Friday night. But I think in terms of tonight's VAR debate, we'll call it there, and no doubt resume next week, same time, same place. But as for tonight's show, in any case, have you enjoyed, John, going back over another routine one at the office for the boys?
Absolutely. And it's just good to be back, as I say, talking to you boys and just talking about Celtic and chatting to the guys in the chat and that. And I've missed it, man. It's
good to have you back, my friend. Always good to have you back. And yourself, Franco, we thought we were going to lose you to some technical difficulties at the start, but you came on bright as a button.
Just like a few years, we're no tech savvy, so once you forget a password, all panic sets in and that. And
you can still run your emails better than Molly Collins can run VAR right enough. But
that's just one last thing, just before you wrap up, Anthony. I just want to say thanks again to everybody who's joined the chat, and I know I've not brought up everybody's comments because when I'm going on my rants, I'm kind of I'm one track minded, so I missed quite a lot of them, so I apologise. But just looking back, I know you've made some great points, and I always appreciate you taking part in conversation and chatting with each other as well. And thanks again to everybody who's been reaching out to me and making sure I'm good and everything else, and saying they're glad to have me back and all that. I appreciate it. It's like I say, it's been great to come back.
Here, we'll second that. And I think in terms of tonight, that's us all done. But the boys will be back on Friday night. We'll be looking ahead to our trip to Hampden in the semi-final for our next match against Kilmarnock, 2 in a week. Hopefully, we can maybe rack up a few more goals and book our slot in the final at the end of February. But that's us for tonight, guys. Thanks again. And to coin Stephen's phrase, stay well and keep safe. Hail, hail.